Hello, my name is Peter Hudis, and I'm here to talk to you about, say a few words about my book, Marx's Concept of the Alternative to Capitalism, which was published by Haymarket Books. And I wish to encourage you to support Haymarket Books and radical publishing in general. And a few words, therefore, about how my book tries to contribute to the ongoing discussion about the meaning of socialism and an alternative to capitalism today. My book is the first full-length discussion of Marx's concept of socialism and communism based on a systematic exploration of his early, his middle, and his late writings. The main point of the book is to show that is against the claim that Marx never talked about socialism or communism, because after all, he opposed utopian speculation and idle discussion of cookshops of the future. In fact, there are numerous places throughout Marx's work in which he delves into what would a genuine alternative to capitalist mode of production look like. Moreover, in many of his disputes with fellow socialists that run throughout his entire career, actually, when you look at them carefully, center on a debate over different conceptions of what's the nature of socialist society, whether it be his debates with figures like Pierre-Joseph Proudhon or later Ferdinand Lassalle and many others. This was one of the central determinants of Marx's theoretical and political work, was arguing the meaning of socialism, which cannot be done unless there is some at least implicit conception of socialism to engage in. Most of all, what I try to show of critical importance is that Marx's ability to penetrate beneath the surface level of society and issue a critique of the fundamental inhumanity of capitalist social relations is intricately tied to the fact that his negative critique of society embedded in it is a vision of an alternative one. Now, I'm not in my book simply picking out little snippets of Marx here or there where he might have wandered about and started speculating on the nature of socialism or communism that really didn't have much to do with his overall theoretical project or not really germane to his critique of political economy. That's not the point that my book is arguing. What I argue is that the concept of socialism that Marx drew from the worker struggles of his time, which he then develops theoretically and engages in a critique with other socialists and communists over, and most importantly of all, brings to bear on his critique of political economy over the subsequent 3 decades in working on Das Kapital, produced a far more radical conception of an alternative to capitalism than has been upheld by the vast majority of post-Marx Marxists. In other words, what my book seeks to argue is that even if Marx never wrote a single word about socialism and communism, which is not the case, the depth of his critique of the logic of capital and the law of value that defines capitalist society involves and produces and intimates a transcendence of capitalist society in terms of a distinct conception of what a non-capitalist society would be like. Negative critique for a dialectician always implies some sort of positive, affirmative, normative stance about the future. And that's what I try to show the development of in Marx's own work. Now, as we know, the standard view today, frankly, back in Marx's day, and in certainly the standard view in the 20th century, is capitalism equals market anarchy, socialism equals planned production, capitalism equals existence of private property, the means of production, socialism equals collective ownership of the means of production, either by the state or by workers' cooperatives, etc. And what I argue in the book is this has been a disastrous legacy. This disastrous legacy because it has meant defining so narrowly what capitalism and what socialism is, constitutes importing categories specific to capitalism into one's conception of what is the new society or socialism. What I show in my book is that even before Marx started to engage in the critique of political economy, that is in the 1840s, he had a much deeper conception of socialism than simply the counterposition of market versus plan and state versus private. And subsequently, his critique of capital, therefore, is not on the phenomenal level of market versus plan or property relations or property forms, but delves into the production, class, and most of all, human relations that are the conditions for the possibility of the existence of value production in the first place. The critique of those conditions, the critique of value production and augmentation of value as an end in itself, leads Marx to a distinctive conception of socialism that becomes especially explicit near the end of his life in works such as A Critique of the Gotha Program, which is worth our attention re-examining with ISA today. Today we have a new generation emerging, and I see who are seeking to rediscover the idea of socialism. Unfortunately, the conception of socialism that's available to this new generation remains vague, and in many cases, a repetition of the failed understanding of what socialism is of the past. My book is a modest contribution to try to raise that level of discussion by returning to Marx, as we must always do when we reach a crisis point, as we are now with this pandemic, to rethink what Marx's Marxism means for today, in the sense of how does his critique of capital speak to our need to envision a genuine, viable alternative to capitalism that transcends not just the limits of existing capitalism, but also those of the failed so-called socialist and communist experiments that were carried out in his name. I want to end by thanking all of you for listening. Most of all, support Haymarket Books. Go to the website of Haymarket. There's a lot of wonderful, magnificent titles that Haymarket has been publishing over these years. And support Radical Publishing, support Haymarket Books, and engage in the needed dialogue to make a new human society possible, hopefully in our time. Be healthy and be safe.